Hi there. I want to talk about structural challenges with building back better and thinking differently about Canada's competitive position and what we can do. And I really want to give some emphasis to the structural challenges that the economy and our business leaders face. So, one or two of you have really noticed, perhaps for the first time, that most of our businesses in this country are really quite small. In fact, 98% of our businesses have less than 100 people, and just 0.2% of our businesses are large. Now, large businesses have more capacity for innovation, more capacity to absorb new technologies, more abilities to reach globally markets and people. But small businesses, particularly businesses with 10 people or less, which is the bulk of businesses in our economy, have very low absorption capacities, very low abilities to respond to significant change in the market or to embrace new technologies powerfully. So that's one structural problem. The structure of our companies is a barrier to increasing competitiveness. The second structural challenge is the fact that we're a mess politically. We have so many jurisdictions that have different rules and regulations, to the point at which it's cheaper to drive hay on a truck from Alberta down to the States, across, and then up to another jurisdiction than it is simply to drive from Alberta to British Columbia, because you'd have to repack the truck. So we have different legal obligations, different regulations, different structural requirements for processing goods and services between borders across the country. And there are real trade barriers within Canada that, according to the Governor of the Bank of Canada, are costing us billions each year. And then nobody's really clear what the federal government is for. So what is it supposed to do in terms of enabling and encouraging competitiveness when significant legislation sits in the hands of provinces? And one example of that is an attempt to negotiate international trade deals, such as the one with Europe or the one with Asia Pacific, all of which require provincial buy-in at a very deep level, which is yet to happen in terms of the EU agreement that was reached several years ago. And in particular, one of the things that this federal-provincial boundary issue raises is how the federal government and the provincial governments align in support of innovation. The only thing they've aligned on is giving money to universities. And I've said before, in one of the videos that I'm recording on innovation, that universities are engines of ideation, not innovation that leads to commercial value. And what the governments of Canada do, provincial and federal, is because they can't work out what their real relationship is to stimulate economic growth and development, they fund university research in the hope that that will lead to something useful. Another structural impediment to our future is our demography. Roughly 5,000 people aged 65 plus are leaving the workforce every week in Canada. In the US, the number is 10,000 a day. So both economies are losing talent. And the key to our future is immigration, a massive increase in immigration. And it's very telling that during the pandemic, we've actually lowered the ability to attract people because of the transport restrictions and travel restrictions. So we're falling short on our targets of recruiting skilled immigrant workers. But equally, we're being poached more and more by the US. So as they face a quality crisis in terms of finding highly skilled people, they're seeking to find them here and can lure them because they can offer higher salaries, because productivity in the US is higher. So this structural issue of demography, and demography is destiny, will shape a lot of what we can do. Another structural problem is the speed at which companies collapse. So in a typical year, Canada will create about 23,650 goods manufacturing companies, people that actually produce things you can go touch, feel, and buy. But in that same year, 21,700 goods manufacturing companies will have died. And so we net gain very few manufacturing companies each year. And it's exactly the same in the services sector. We create about 73,000 companies a year and lose about 69,000. And if you look over a medium term, 5 to 10 years, then the survival rate of companies in Canada is low in comparison to some of our competitors. And then we look at where the fastest growing sectors of our economy are. They are ICT, information communication technologies, growing at around 10% per year, construction at about 9%, manufacturing at about 8%, and then professional services at about 8%. Now, what this means is that there's a lot of intangible wealth and intangible assets being built. And so we're increasingly becoming an economy of intangibles as opposed to the traditional way in which we have produced wealth. And the last structural question is, where do we sell to? Well, clearly we sell to each other. But most of our trade, 73% of all of our exports, are to the United States. And only about 5% is to China. The UK is next with 4%, then Japan with 2.5%, and Mexico with 1%. We're not really good at getting our stuff to global markets. We have very little presence in Asia, which is the biggest and fastest growing market with money. We have very little presence in India or Africa. And so our preoccupation with selling to one big jurisdiction to the south of us, because it's logistically easy and structurally simple to do trade with, particularly now that we have a clear trade agreement, is in fact a structural problem because it makes it more difficult to imagine how we sell to jurisdictions in other parts of the world. And so I just wanted to raise these structural challenges as you begin to think about week 3 and the work you have to do to pull your story together. Do address some of these structural issues. Hope you're having fun with this course. I'm loving reading all of your materials. Thanks so much for the contributions you're making. Can't turn it off.